Hi, and welcome to the Restorative Wellness Clinicians Corner, a video series exclusively for functional health professionals, where we interview the top experts in the latest research, products, tools, and best practices for getting your clients exceptional results. Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the RWS Clinicians Corner. I am super excited for our conversation today. We're going to talk about something that we don't normally get to talk about. We're going to dive into the wonderful world of tech and AI specifically, not, as I was telling our guest speaker, Joe, I was saying before, I think AI, how many here do you think autoimmune? I just think AI is my thing for autoimmune. So I keep having to not talking about autoimmune, we're talking about artificial intelligence. So let me introduce Joe. Joe is a former Inc. 500 entrepreneur. He is a 5-time technology founder with 3 successful exits, including lottery.com, which went public for $526 million, and GrowFlow, which sold for $62.5 million. So we're talking with somebody who's got some experience in the tech space, that is for sure. Today, Joe is CEO of Daily.ai, which is an AI company that helps brands and thought leaders publish AI automated email newsletters that produce 40 to 60% open rates. And if you know anything about open rates, that is astounding. Those are exceptionally good open rates for emails in less than 5 minutes a week, all without writing a single piece of content. Daily.ai produces AI newsletters for thought leaders such as Peter Diamandis, Joe Polish, JJ Virgin, Cameron Herold, Chris Voss, and 70 plus other small brands in 20 different industries. Joe, welcome. It's so great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's really great to be here.
I would love to hear a little bit more about your story. Can you tell us your journey as an entrepreneur? And then you've clearly got a background in tech here, so I'd love to hear about that. And then what made you switch and focus on AI specifically?
Yeah, well, I actually grew up in a farm town of less than 1,000 people in the 80s. And so we didn't really know a lot about money, didn't come from money. We didn't even know anybody that knew anybody that had money or knew anything about business. So my journey to entrepreneurship is really born out of finding really great mentors and good mentorship and people that were way farther down the field than I was and said, hey, I see something in you. Let me help you. And so, I actually started my career in business. I got a degree and I worked in management consulting. I spent a few years at Microsoft. And then I realized one day that it wasn't like it was like a flash in the pan one day. It was a series of events that I'm really born and created to be an entrepreneur. One of the very first things I did as a kid was I had all kinds of weird little things I would do. My parents were both working and gone most of the time. And so they would just give me money to buy my lunch. But I figured out pretty quickly that if I could stop at the little convenience store and buy all the candy that I could get my hands on, I could trade that candy for the best food in the lunchroom, because other people's parents had time to make them lasagna and tacos or really good stuff. So that was and then that progressed. And I have all these stories where long before I was old enough to go to college, I had done things like this to just be resourceful and get through. And so, I decided to leave Microsoft, and it was actually really interesting. My father passed away from cancer. I got married and I left my city in Seattle, where I'd basically spent the last chunk of my life. And I went to LA with my newly married wife and was like, hey, we're going to live in a house with 7 other people, 2 bathrooms and 1 shower. And we're going to be starting a new company and I'm leaving my job. So it was a pretty big transition, but it felt very natural because it kind of felt like I was 3 or 4 degrees out of the bullseye of what I was meant to do. And then as soon as I left and started my company, it was challenging and scary and lots of ambiguity, but I really felt like that's where I was supposed to be. So since then, as you unpacked in my bio, that's all I've been doing is just building and selling companies, for the last 13 years. And it's been an incredible journey. And what happened is the last company that I sold was a company called GrowFlow. And we did compliance software in the legal cannabis industry. So if you think about every time the government wants to track, whether that's medicinal or recreational, where the plant is to make sure there's no black market activity, We were one of the market leaders that basically helped the folks that were involved with that process. How do you track it? Where's it going? And the thing about that, though, is that we couldn't buy ads to target our target customer. Like we couldn't go on like social media or Facebook or Google or whatever to buy ads. So we actually had to grow that business using direct mail. That means like snail mail, stuff like regular old mail, and email. And we were able to grow that company from around $900,000 in annual recurring revenue to 8 million in less than 3 years during the pandemic. And so that's where I realized, wow, email is really powerful. And I got to sort of revisit it as this really powerful tool in business, but it's also really a pain in the neck. There's a lot of things that could be reimagined in it. And how I got involved with AI is actually really simple. I was turning the corner from my 30s to my 40s. I was having my second child, and I thought, I've got one more in me as a founder. Let's do this one more time. So as GrowFlow was being sold, I started asking people in my network, hey, is anybody doing anything cool with like AI? That seems like it's going to be a big deal. And anything with AI and email would be great. And it's one of those things like be careful what you ask the universe. It just might give you exactly what you ask for. So my business partner is a guy named Dr. Peter Diamandis. He's written like loads of New York Times bestselling books around futurism and technology, and recently wrote a book called Life Force with Tony Robbins last year that was around health and longevity. So he had this thing called PhD Labs, and they had sort of spun up this thing, but it wasn't in the market, and it was like an AI newsletter thing, but they were just using it for him. So I got introduced to them, and I saw that, and I was like, man, I've been selling compliance software for the last 3.5 years. I'm pretty sure I can figure out how to sell AI email newsletters or AI anything. And this was back in 2021, right? So this is when I learned a ton about AI, dove in headfirst, became CEO, became a co-founder, took the product to market. And I would tell people, even my entrepreneur friends, like my tech friends at parties, like how excited I was about AI and machine learning. And it was almost like I'd feel them going to sleep. It was but then all of a sudden last October, everybody started seeing astronaut cartoon photos of all their friends on social media, that this app Lensa really blew up, if you remember that. And then about 30 days later, ChatGPT came out, and ChatGPT is the like most adopted, fastest growing digital product launch in like the history of humanity, at least in this version of recorded history. So AI has really had this Cambrian explosion moment this year, right? It's really difficult to exist in a space now where it's not impacting you, or you're not hearing about it every 5 seconds. And so we were very fortunate to have already been in market for a little over a year and had learned a ton about AI and what that means. And maybe we can unpack what that means, because it's a really broad term. And we sort of had a little bit of a head start, thankfully. And so it's kind of my story and how I got involved with AI. And now 3.5 years into like this AI experiment or learning about it, I feel like I'm the expert, but I don't feel like that's right, because how much can you really learn in 3.5 years? But boy, has a lot changed. So happy to go whichever direction the conversation needs to go, but that's my story and how I got involved with AI.
I love it. And I can tell you that I was at A4M in Las Vegas last November. I don't know if it was the day that ChatGPT came out, or it was like right around that time. And Peter Diamandis was speaking. So a whole room full of healthcare, I think there's thousands of us healthcare providers. And he was talking about AI and some of the potential. And you could feel in the room the excitement, terror, and like, what is this? And a combination of like, there's always those people who can't wait to jump in. And then there's those who are like really resistant and digging their heels in of like, no. And it really feels like, that was in November. It's hard to believe that was in November. And here we are, September, not even a year later. And everybody, ChatGPT, I'm not surprised to hear that it's the fastest adopted piece of tech, because everybody is using it. It's changed all these things. I would love for you to explain what is different about it than something like a really well-crafted prompt in Google, right? Like, because we are talking about something that is, it's a totally different tech and a totally different model. So can you help us a whole bunch of, we're all great at health stuff, but the tech it's a whole other world. Can you help us understand that difference?
Yeah, certainly. And just to be clear, I'm a non-technical co-founder. I just happen to be in tech, so I've learned a lot about it. So I'll try to make this as layman as possible without getting into the nerd details. Yeah. But let's just unpack AI, right? So there's different kinds of AI. there's machine learning, there's neural nets, there's natural language processing, there's computer vision. Computer vision is like what drives my Tesla on the freeway. So
Right.
when most people are talking about AI, they're mostly talking about something called machine learning. And there's a subcomponent of machine learning that's is called deep learning and neural nets. We don't need to get into that, but machine learning is basically it's predicting the next output. So if I give you three inputs with higher and higher degree of accuracy, can you predict the fourth output? So it's doing that in a very sophisticated way, so much so that with very little information, which in this case, if you've used ChatGPT, you might call it a prompt. If with very little information, like a prompt, it can basically go out and predict what the answer should be. Now, ChatGPT is different than Google in so many fundamental ways. I don't know where to start. The only difference is like you might be looking for information and you type something into a thing and that thing gives you information back. That's about where the similarities end. Now, Google uses AI to give you the results, right? To give you the search results.
Okay.
But what a tool like ChatGPT is going to do is it's actually going to synthesize an answer for you. Google's going to give you lots of sources of information where to go look. And fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of us entrepreneurs have figured out how to game those results with SEO. And so you oftentimes have to weed through poor quality information or information that's masquerading as information, but it's actually marketing or whatever to find what you're looking for, along with ads, et cetera. And so ChatGPT is it's actually just what's called a large language learning model. You might hear the term LLM, just large language learning model. That for all intents and purposes, that is the AI. That's the machine learning model. Okay. And what they've done is they've gone out and consumed vast quantities of the internet, lots of textbooks, up until I believe some point in 2021. Okay. After that, the model stopped being trained. And it's basically synthesizing. It's giving you, like, you can go into ChatGPT and you can say, like, you could actually, when you prompt ChatGPT, you can tell it, you can basically shape its responses. You can say, hey, you're an expert in the health industry in North America, and I'm a health practitioner that wants to learn how to launch my own business. Here's some context. Give me 5 tips of how to launch my own business. Now, what Google would do is it would give you a bunch of listicles and articles and things for you to search through and synthesize and draw your own conclusions. And what ChatGPT is going to go ahead and do is actually just synthesize all of that into the next best answer. It's a lot more sophisticated. But it's basically, hey, you gave me a prompt. I'm trying to predict what you actually want. What's the next best answer? So I could keep going deeper into it, but that, in a nutshell, that's what it is. It's an incredible tool for synthesis and output across a variety of domains, entirely in text in this case.
So and tell me how that plays out in something like research, right? Because in research, the application would maybe more be in something like Google or search because you want to get that data. This one is going to do the thinking for you based on how you've asked it to think for you. Is that a correct?
That's exactly right. So if you've learned any frameworks or mental models from your life or your learning or your schooling or your experience as a professional, you can actually bring those to the party with ChatGPT. So let's say that there's a really huge research paper. You could say, you're an expert in medical research and, using the 80-20 mental model, please summarize this research brief as if I was a 6-year-old. And then it'll explain it in plain English the best that it can. Now, there's lots of other ways you could research, right? You could ask it to actually go out and do research for you, but these models have limitations, right? It's basically like a really, 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 really good intern, but you don't want to ship intern work to the marketplace. You always want to check the intern before the work goes out, right? And so it can do what's called hallucinations, meaning it just wants to make you happy. It wants to give you an answer that's going to make you happy. It's more optimizing for that than an accurate answer. So if you said, hey, go based on your data, give me answer this question and cite your sources. In many cases, or in some cases, depending how you structure the prompt, it'll actually make up sources that don't exist and they look very legitimate. And so it does have its limitations, and you sort of, like any tool, you have to learn how to use it appropriately. It's like if you use your knife in your kitchen too long, it needs to be sharpened. It's kind of the same way with ChatGPT, not implying that it gets duller, but that you need to learn how to use it to be effective. And part of learning how to use a kitchen knife is keeping it sharp, right? Part of learning this new tool is learning where learning what it's good for and what it's not good for. Maybe a better analogy would be like, if you wanted to hammer a nail, you'd use a hammer, not a knife, right? There's a limitation. If you wanted to cut a steak, you probably wouldn't use a hammer. But it's funny when people try to cut steaks with hammers, they do the equivalent of that with ChatGPT. They get really poor results, and then they sort of make the tool look bad in the press.
Right.
It was just a warning to say that the tool is not perfect. It feels super cool, like you're talking to a super intelligence, but it's very clearly just a piece of software trying to make you happy and guess the next best answer.
I mean, like a really good intern that wants to make you happy and is more concerned about that than accuracy. I think that is brilliant right there. Just keeping that, because that is exactly what it feels like when I've played around with it, not comprehensively. I use it. There's certain things that I use it for. And I want to start talking about applications in a few minutes here, but I do think that, I've noticed that asking it for accuracy, you start digging into some of the resources and you're like, where did it come up with this? So just knowing that, I think I love that, like a really good intern who wants to make you happy. Tell us, for you personally, like what intrigues you the most about this, and what is some of the potential that you see here? I mean, and it's interesting to know the different models of this. Maybe we just stick to the machine learning at this point, since that seems to be the most. I mean, we could talk about the cool things about Teslas and things like that too. But I think that let's talk about this because I think that's what's the most applicable. Unless, correct me if I'm wrong, are there other applications that you would see as us as health professionals? It would seem to me machine learning is the most applicable here, but correct me if I'm wrong. And
yeah, definitely. Well, let's just back up. I think a really important mental model to understand when you're using these technologies is people often ask, like, well, is AI going to, how's it going to impact the world?
Yes.
Right? Well, one of our clients, a guy named Dan Sullivan, he runs a company called Strategic Coach.
Yeah.
And I was having a conversation in a small group with Dan, and people were basically, there were some AI experts that showed up, and they had really high conviction in all of their predictions around what was going to happen with AI. And Dan basically said something very insightful, as Dan tends to say. He said, as humans, we're actually really, really bad at predicting the future, but we're really good at assigning meaning. And so anytime you hear someone that's talking about AI and is giving you a 100% conviction rate on all of their predictions for the future, I think it's important to remember two things. One, they're predictions, and we're bad at predicting. And two, they're really just trying to sell you on their meaning of the future. So they're pouring their story and their values and what they think into it. And there's like a couple of clear camps. There's some camps that are wildly optimistic and think it's going to usher in some kind of incredible utopia. And then there's folks that think it's going to completely annihilate our species, and everybody in between. And I think rather than taking it all hook, line, and sinker, it's a very valuable mental model to understand that just we are very bad at predicting the future, even with AI, and that most of us are just assigning a meaning to it, and they're explaining that meaning through an elaborate story with varying degrees of conviction. So if you feel scared, or if you feel optimistic, like that's awesome. There's nothing wrong with either of those. But just be careful when you listen to other experts that have these really high conviction, like this is going to happen by this date and you're going to be out of a job. It's like, oh, I don't know. Like, you sure about that? Unless that person is like working on the model at Google or at OpenAI and they're working on a module designed to do that, I would probably pay closer attention to them. But I think most of the folks that are doing that are smart enough not to say anything because they don't know for sure. They're smart enough to know that they don't know what's going to happen in the future. I think that's a really important mental model to start. Another one is, as far as AI is concerned, the best way I can think of to describe how it's going to impact our species and your job and all that is go back and try to imagine a time when we had no electricity. How did we communicate? How did we travel? How did we connect? How did we do commerce? How did all that work? And then think about the difference when electricity came into the picture. A lot of new opportunity showed up. I'm an entrepreneur. I tend to see only opportunity. So this is me pouring my meaning into it. But lots of amazing things happened when we got electricity, right? Incredible advances. Now also lots of negative things happen when we got electricity. Like we have all these new ways to die, right? All these new ways to hurt ourselves, but incredible progress. I believe that AI is going to be a more important technology than electricity. Kevin Kelly, the editor-in-chief of Wired magazine, said something really fascinating. He said that everything that has been electrified will be cognified. What does that mean? That means everything with electricity is going to get AI put in it, so it's smarter, right? So it's going to stand on the shoulders of electricity, but it's going to be adopted much, much, much faster than we adopted electricity as a species. And keep in mind, there are plenty of humans on the planet that don't have access to electricity, right? But for the ones that do, what comes next in terms of the adoption curve? If ChatGPT is any of a bellwether indicator, it's going to be an extraordinary adoption curve, exponential. And I think that one thing we also can say pretty clearly is that we don't really our brains don't really do well with exponential. We're okay with linear change, some of us, but exponential change is wild. And so I think the best way to think about AI is just go back and look, how do we behave when electricity came, and what would that look like if it happened quite a bit faster? And then you can start to wrap your head around the magnitude of it all. And I also think that, like I said, there'll be lots of opportunity before there'll be lots of danger, but certainly there will be both. So just kind of top down, big picture before we kind of jump into it. I think those are healthy and well-adjusted mental models to help you stay sane during all of this change and all of the technology adoption that we're going to continue to see for the near future, for sure.
I think that's really great advice. And I think alongside that is that it's here. So ignoring it and playing the ostrich is probably not the most, let's just say, productive approach, because it's here. And so like it or hate it, it's definitely a part of what we're all dealing with. I mean, it was funny, even as I was making a couple of notes as you're doing, and of course it's, already predicting the end of my sentences. So it's built in already to like half of all the things that we do, right? So
that's just a good point to double click on. It's everywhere, right? Like I took my family to Japan for 12 days, and there's a washing machine. We used to wash our clothes by hand. Then we had those hand crank machines, then electric washing machines. Well, there's a washing machine. It's a washing machine and dryer in one. It knows if it's lights or darks. It uses special soap in either case, and it will basically wash and dry your clothes with the least amount of electricity and the least amount of sound while you sleep. And it's all using AI to do that. If you pull out your phone at night and you go take a picture of the moon, if you've got an Android device, you can actually see the moon in all its glory. If you have an iPhone, the moon looks terrible because Google's built an AI algorithm to help decipher what the moon should look like in a photo. But your AI in your iPhone is quite extraordinary, because like you take a picture, it actually takes like 9 pictures and stitches the best one together so you look like a rock star photographer. Our cars drive ourselves. Netflix suggests what you should watch. Amazon suggests what you should buy. This is all machine learning or a form of AI that's been around for years. So it's already here. We're just going to start seeing it show up in much, much more sort of confronting ways, maybe for some of us. So it's already here. And I think the ways that we see it and interact with it are only going to proliferate. So it's a really good point.
So let's talk about this in our work as health professionals, and I'll say as health professionals in the functional space, because you have experience with us in this space with your work with JJ and others. So so how do you see it playing out specifically in healthcare? And you named something that you hear a lot. It's going to replace, we're all going to be redundant. Why would you need a practitioner? Because you can get all of your labs taken and it can all be spat out. And it's going to be this like absolutely perfectly optimized for exactly what your, data is telling us. So talk to us about the health piece specifically.
Yeah, great. I actually got a really great story for this. So my mom right now has very early stage lymphoma, right? So she's gone through her first set of chemo treatments, and on the journey to figure out, like, was it lymphoma and what should the treatment options be? I was using Google Translate. If you use Google Translate and you use a photo from your phone, it will do what's called optical character recognition, OCR. It'll basically scan all the text. You can copy paste it. And then I would go into ChatGPT and I would say, you're an expert in cancer, in medical research, whatever. Please summarize. And I would take pictures of all of her like discharge documents. Okay. And I would say, hey, based on all this text, please explain. And I would say, this is what they're saying my mom has. Please explain to me like a 10th grader what's going on here. And then I would just ask questions like, what like statistically, what are the most likely treatment options, which are the most invasive, which are the least invasive, keeping in mind my mom's 72 years old and this much weight and this much data, what would you recommend? And so every time it's giving me this caveat, like I'm not a doctor and I'm not a whatever, but here's one way you could think about it. And so Is this going to replace medical advice one day? Maybe, but today there's a huge gap for the average person that doesn't speak Latin and didn't go study medical jargon to translate medical speak into just how we communicate on a day-to-day basis. So imagine, and this is already true today, we can actually use these tools to be able to communicate with our patients and the people in the ecosystem in plain English. Now, granted, that says nothing about the litigious nature of the medical field, and you have to be careful and all these kinds of things. But today, because I'm in AI, I could do that. But imagine a future where it's like, all right, I got all like Latin medical output, things that I quite frankly don't understand at all, and I'm fancy myself a rather smart guy. And I can sort of parse this and help my mom make intelligent decisions with her medical professionals and ask those kinds of questions. So like, I think today we can make better, we can communicate better with our patients and the people in the field. I think the other thing that's really interesting is you can actually check your own thinking, right? So today, I forget the exact stats because this is clearly not where we hang our hat in AI, but the accuracy of reading things like CT scans and X-rays and basically any bodily readout, they have AI models now that are far superior and far earlier at spotting potential concerns in patients. Does that mean it's accurate? I don't know. You need to synthesize. We need to use the actual intelligence between our ears to synthesize that data plus what we see out in the real world plus. So today, I guess what I'm saying is long before it's a threat, it's going to become an extraordinary tool. And that's a meaning that I'm attaching to it. But it's also something that I'm seeing and experiencing firsthand. So I think there's going to be all these really incredible ways that we can use this technology to interact, communicate, and get actually better health outcomes. The other thing too is I love using these chat tools like ChatGPT to not start with a blank page. So anywhere where you're like, you're writing something, rather than starting with a blank page, maybe have the chat tool write that for you. Mm-hmm. But I don't stop there. I'll take that output that it gives me. Now, this could be anything from an email, a follow-up to a patient, writing templates in your business, marketing, sales, operations, hiring, like literally anywhere inside an organization. And what I do is I take the output and we edit it with our experts, because again, AI is just a really, really, really good intern. And then what I do is I feed the text back into it and I say, using the inversion thinking mental model, give me 5 reasons why this won't meet my stated objective. And it'll actually read it and poke holes in it. So it's not just starting from zero. Now it's sort of my thought partner and how can I make it better? And also like, great, number one, you pointed out this flaw. What would it look like if it was better? Please redraft that for me. And then it'll draft it because I don't want to start with zero. I clean it up, I replace it. And now I've just made it my thought partner in the creation and iteration of whatever it is that I'm creating that involves text, a legal document, an email follow-up to a patient, whatever, as far as your creative mind could take written text, a sign for the bathroom. I mean, literally anything, which nowadays, interestingly enough, is becoming more and more a minefield to navigate, but literally anything. So those are just 2 really simple ways that you could just automatically upgrade how you communicate via text in the marketplace, regardless of industry, but especially in this industry.
Okay, I love this so much. So I'm going to start with the first piece that you talked about, because one of the things, so what our training program does is we train health professionals, a lot of nutrition professionals and such, to work with lab data, adding that layer of information into their practice so that they can give even more accurate, better recommendations. And one of the things that we often see happen when you first start working with objective lab data is it becomes really tempting to forget about the client and the symptom, right? We all go through this. It's the natural learning curve. As soon as we add this new piece of information that feels more objective because it's numbers on a page, we start to chase the numbers on the page, and we have to be like, wait. Those numbers on a page represent what's going on with this particular client. And it's that check that how do these 2 things work together and make sense? So what you're saying here is we can really think of using AI as that next layer of its additional data. It can allow us to go way further possibly than we could have gone before, but we always need to, going back to the intern, we always need to cross-check it. We always need to substantiate that within what we already know, the tools that we are already using. Does this make sense? We're not going to throw all of our other thinking completely out if it's this sort of like one piece that's going off in this direction, everything else is sitting here. So it's still reminding us that, we ultimately are the ones in control here. And it's it's a great, I mean, I keep coming back to this idea of it being a really great intern. I think that it's working for you, and you can ask it to do these things and adds that additional layer. The second piece, I mean, I love the blank sheet. How I use it a lot is if I've got a talk I'm working on and I'm like, what am I going to call this thing? And I'll give, I'll either give the whole talk to it, or I'll give key pieces of it and say, this is what I'm trying to get across, come up with like 5 different possible titles. And it gives me a starting point. So I'm not starting with that blank page. This idea, I've taken it and then taken it back and asked it to edit it for me. But this idea of having it poke holes in it, I love that. Can you give us some more examples of things like that? Is such a creative way to use this as your intern to dramatically up level the quality of your output. As you said, as it now becomes your thought partner. Do you have any other examples of this kind of in action that you use regularly or you see others use successfully?
Yeah. I think anytime you've learned a framework or shorthand or a mental model or something like that, you can use it, right? And so let's say, like, I'll give you another example. I get my blood drawn every 90 days to look at all kinds of indicators for I have a performance health doctor, monitors my workouts, the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I will do the same thing. I'll scan in my text from my blood readout, and I'll say, here's my objectives, here's my age, here's actually like my trailing, like last 3 blood draw data in a chart or whatever, or like I just list the numbers. And then I'll say, given these objectives and given actually my sleep data and where I'm at, and I'll ask it a question, like if I want to, I don't know, like add 10 pounds of lean muscle mass over the next 180 days, what could a workout program look like where I'm not going to be tired and can still hang out with my kids or whatever? I'm 42. So like I give it all this extra context and I ask it for that stuff, or silly things like, I'll during the pandemic, I misread the dosing on my, how much vitamin D I was supposed to be taking. I was taking twice as much. And I wasn't getting my blood drawn because pandemic.
Right.
And so later I got my blood drawn. I was like, how is it really bad that I'm like way above KPI on my vitamin D? And like, what does that mean? So like, I was able to like ask it to explain that to me. But another thing that I'll do is like, I'll ask it questions. Like one of my favorite mental models, and besides 80-20 or inversion thinking and these the kinds of things, is like feedback loops. So I'll say, if I want to make sure that I'm eating enough food while training to add 10 pounds of lean muscle mass and carrying around 2 kids and maintaining 7 to 7.5 hours of sleep a night, what are some feedback loops that I can put in place to make sure I'm eating enough? Oh. Right? Or that, like, cause it's like protein all day long. My wife's like bringing me chicken like 5 times a day while I'm on Zoom calls, So like, well, what is that? How much should I be eating? And what should that look like? And how do I know? And it's, give me creative ideas for that. So anywhere I can put a feedback loop in my life or my business, I know I'm going to get better, because as the Peter Drucker says, what gets measured gets managed. So like if I pay attention to a metric over and over again and try to make it better, magically gets better. So that's another one. So, but you, like, for example, I'm on the board of a diabetes treatment facility that uses insulin in very creative ways to reduce the symptoms of diabetes. And I don't understand this at all, but I guess when you get your MD, PhD, you have to learn something called the Krebs cycle. And like, no one wants to learn that. No. So we had it explain the Krebs cycle as like a 10th grader would explain it. And then we turned that into an analogy. We said, hey, now can you help us come up with an analogy? And so, most people remember studying the Krebs cycle if you're an MD, but you don't really remember what it is. You just remember hating it, brain dumping it, right? But if you use a funny analogy, it's like you dig up a little piece of their memory and they're like, oh. Right. And so like, these are little things where it's like the summaries, the analogies, whatever mental model you want to bring to the party. Like if there's frameworks from the health space, you can use those and it will understand them and it will spit out outputs that are appropriate for that. So I could keep going. Like we do this a lot in marketing. So there's frameworks in marketing that we use all the time. Like, so for example, like they're like different copywriting frameworks for like writing text to get people to take action, right? So you can feed it a copywriting framework. You can say, hey, here's my ideal target customer. Here's what I'm trying to achieve. Now, based on this framework, explain the framework, just give it the name. You don't have to break the whole thing down. Write me an email that writes copy that will compel this audience to do this thing. And it'll do it right in that framework. You don't have to give it any more context. You just tell it what it is. Like there's like, you can Google these if you're not into marketing, but like there's one like AIDA and then AIDIA or AIDAI. You just put that in without any context and it knows what it means and it will write it for you. So anywhere where you have a framework that you've learned from school or your profession or your life, you can probably plug it into ChatGPT and it will know it and it will help you create stuff, not from a blank page. So it's literally any framework you can bring to the party.
And so would this address the issue? Because in the health space, especially in the functional health space, as I'm sure you're aware, especially given the last 3 years, like there's different camps, right? There's different schools of thought, and some information is not as accessible as other information. And we're always in other contexts running up against algorithms, or we're running up against crafty SEO. And it's really hard to know the origin of like what is the where did it get its training? And I know that you're explaining that it's all these textbooks and things, but do we have to factor that in, or can we compensate for that in our prompts?
Yeah.
Like factor that in?
Yeah, really good question. Well, the short answer is we don't totally, truthfully, honestly know where it got the information from.
Okay.
Like there were some leaks on Twitter and, but even if you did know that, I think what you care most about is getting an output that's accurate, that's going to move the needle for whatever you're doing.
Yes.
So another mental model that we use at our company, Daily.ai, is that outcomes are more important than outputs. Meaning you get an output from an AI tool. If it doesn't move the needle or get the intended objective in your business, your life, or with your customers, your patients, then it's really interesting and cool, but it's also really interesting and cool to watch Netflix. And it's about as helpful to your business if it's not moving the needle, right? So you want to test everything and make sure that you're getting the data. You want to make sure it's actually moving the needle, if that makes sense.
Right. That's really good. That's good feedback. I have more questions, but I also want to make sure that I see some questions in here, and you guys, this is such a great opportunity. Why don't you throw your questions in chat as we keep going here? Laura asks if you recommend paying for the upgraded version of ChatGPT.
Yeah, I think so. You can use plugins in the upgraded version, I think. I've had the upgraded version since like the before it was even available to the public. So I would recommend it. It's a very small investment. It's about as expensive as Netflix, or possibly even cheaper at this point, because Netflix just raised their price. And if you really want to sort of get up the experience curve of what it's like to make AI your companion, your partner, your intern, I would highly recommend it. If you could get a really, 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 really good intern in writing for $20 a month, would you hire him? If yes, then yes. So yeah.
Right. That's great. Excellent feedback and advice. So Courtney asks a question here, which I think you've touched on, but I think it's an important clarification here. So is there a way to know if it's made up information or sources? So how much of this is like that sort of creative predicting what should come next, and how much of this is based on that fact? And like how much of it is it wanting to make you happy versus how much is it based on real data?
Yeah, anything where you're asking for facts and history, you got to check it. So the way to do it is you check it, you just validate it, each point that it makes. You can ask it to go back and explain its steps. And there's different models now that have been built and different tools that'll actually be a lot more accurate. But yeah, there is a way. It's like manual elbow grease for the most part. Anytime you're asking it to derive facts and figures or do research, you really, really want it to, if it's not just like broad strokes so that you can get a directionally correct thought process around something, like where details matter, like case histories in law or medical references or academic references for journals and research and et cetera, I just full stop wouldn't trust it. I mean, there's plugins that you can use that will allow you to surf the internet today. So if you pointed it towards a series of medical papers and said, only use data from this particular source, then you can sort of hedge that a little bit. But generally speaking, it hallucinates so frequently and so often that I don't even use it for those use cases, full stop at all. And if I did, I would actually hire an expert to go and validate every single reference and every single source, because there's a greater than zero chance it's going to screw it up or it's going to make something make you happy.
I think this always, to me, what this comes back to is that this is a different resource than a search engine. Like it is not a search engine. It is your thought partner that might go out and use that search engine. That's
right. That's right. Yeah.
I think that's the way that you're describing this is very, very helpful to like delineate the difference between the two. And it says that question makes me think of TARS in Interstellar, where Matthew McConaughey can turn up his truth setting or his humor setting. I wonder if that will be possible with AI in the future. I mean, it kind of already is possible, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, you can, like with ChatGPT. So there's people that have used the underlying model inside of ChatGPT and similar models to create. You can even, for example, replicate your voice completely or your digital likeness. It's got some pausing, but yeah, you can actually adjust the tone. Like we can do that right now. Like at our company, Daily.ai, we automate marketing. So we make automated email newsletters for thought leaders and small brands. And we can, there's we've made dials where we can turn up that aspects of the brand's tone. So if like the sarcasm is more poignant, we can make it more sarcastic or make it more serious and academic or dry or whatever. So that's already today. I would love to turn up the truth settings to just like 100%. The trouble is that the philosophical question of what is truth is troubling because even as a human species, we don't know the answer to that question. It depends on your value system for the most part. And so it's interesting. I think AI, one of the things AI will actually do is it'll help us better understand our own humanity. Because people say, oh, how do we make AI moral? Well, we don't even know what that means. We can't even agree in large groups what it means to be moral as a species. How are we going to make AI do that? So I think as we wrestle with these things, it's a mirror back to, oh, well, what we sort of need to figure that out ourselves. Truth is one of those sticky ones. So one of our patents inside of our company is on something called the perspective engine. And we call it the perspective engine because it's derived based on the idea that truth is relative sort of to how people show up in the world with their value system. And so rather than calling it the truth engine, we call it the perspective engine. So we tune content to the quote unquote truth or perspective of your audience. Now, again, like I know this is like, like I was raised Christian, and to talk about truth being relative is almost heretical, but just from a philosophical perspective, we all don't see the world the same way. And so in some ways, you can already do exactly what you're talking about in your comment.
It's so interesting how this all, I mean, it really does feel like so many of the movies that we grew up watching are like unfolding in front of our faces, and a lot of these questions not played out in the necessarily the AI taking over the world, but in the actual robots gunning us down, but really making us face to face with some of these complexities in what does it mean to think as a human, as if you have a thought partner, what are sort of the key pieces of it. I think it's fascinating and really interesting.
Yeah, 100%.
Eugenie has a question that I'm sure a lot of folks have here, which is, as an absolute beginner, where do you suggest learning all the terms and jargon that you're using to describe this AI? And also, I would add to that question, where can folks go to learn? I mean, it feels like you mentioned at the beginning, like, who's an expert in this yet? How do people know who to, because I feel like maybe this is definitely reflective of what I look at on something like my Instagram feed, but it's all like, use these prompts, do this, do that, like, how do you, coming back to trust and truth, but how do you know where to sort of trust to get training and resources in this, and something that is so incredibly nascent and feels like it's changing and evolving by the millisecond?
Yeah. The replacement for the word truth, I think if you start asking what's useful, that's a better use of that word. But yeah, I think there's basically two main resources. One is podcasts, one is YouTube. And you'll have to use your own judgment to parse like who's good and who's not. We actually get this question so frequently, and we went out and canvassed a ton of people who talk about AI. Yeah. And for a variety of reasons, we just didn't feel really comfortable saying, oh, you should go to X, right? So we're actually launching a program. It launches next Monday. It's like generative AI 101. It's like $97 a month, and you can quit anytime you want. There's 2 sessions. It's one session where we teach a very basic topic, like how to download ChatGPT and how to use it and what are the prompts. And then one where it's a Q&A where you bring your specific questions. And then we're basically we're going to start by function and go through marketing, sales, operation, administration, and just teach the prompts that we use in our business to do. We have 12 people. We do the work of about 40, just from an output perspective. And so, this isn't to like dog other people who are like teaching, because I think a lot of people have the best intentions, We just didn't feel really good sending anybody there. And so, so many people asked us that we're going to make this a service. So, just to monetize the staff that I have to put on it. But the first like 8 sessions will be taught by myself, and our CTO has been, writing machine learning code for, since he was like 13 years old or whatever. So, and we've been doing a lot of this like behind the scenes with our clients, but we just launched this. It's like not intended to be it's funny, you see these people, they're all selling AI courses, and like 9 months ago they were selling crypto courses, and I don't want to knock anybody's capitalistic hustle. That's not us. We're literally just doing this so that we have a resource to better serve our customers, and we monetize it a little bit so that so we can pay for the staff. But we've decided as a team a couple weeks ago that we're just going to open it up to the public. So if anybody wants information about that, you can email me joe@daily.ai. I can put it into chat, and I can send you a link.
I just put it into, and yeah, I mean, sign me up. I'll sign up. I can tell you that sounds fantastic. And I'm always a big believer in studying from one that I trust, and clearly we trust you. I think that is an incredible service that you're going to be offering at a wonderful price point, because I feel like the potential is enormous. Yeah. And to have somebody what I love about what you're saying right here, I had no idea you were doing this. I'm thrilled. What I love about what you're saying here, because you guys have done, this is what you're doing in your business. Like you're practically applying this and then sharing with others. Because I know that you hear this, oh, I can now get done, but this number of people does. And I know in RWS perspective, we're a very lean and mean team. And we are always trying to find ways that we can do more with less, right? And I think all of us are in that kind of position. A lot of solo entrepreneurs here, a lot of people if they have assistants, fairly small teams, if they have teams. So I think that would be incredible. So yes, please.
Great.
Please.
Yeah. If you just reach out to me, I will send you the link to get you more information on that.
Okay. Awesome. I'm also going to ask you this, and we can edit this out. This does get put on YouTube. Maybe we'll take this part out where you gave your personal email, and I'm sure at some point you will have a sales page, and we can pop that in, because we don't want
Please.
So you guys don't share that broadly. Okay. Awesome. Here's a question I want to ask you. What are some of the mistakes that people make when they use AI? Like, what do you think we've kind of touched on a couple of them, but what are some of the glaring, like, really, don't do that?
Yeah, the biggest mistake is just, you got to test everything. I think that a lot of entrepreneurs in particular, they get really excited about AI and it's going to automate and save a bunch of time. But like I said earlier, I think one of the most important things that we've discovered is that outcomes are more important than outputs. The only way you can figure out if you're getting the outcome is if you're measuring it. Right? Did the thing I was doing before I was doing it with AI, did the AI improve the output I got from the AI, improve the result? In our world, did more people open the email? Did more people click? Did more people go generate leads? Did those leads buy more stuff? Did they refer their friends? Like, these are the kinds of things that like we really care about in a healthy, growing business, regardless of what you're selling. And so if you're generating AI or using AI for any part of that to save time or for any other use case, you got to ask yourself, did it move the needle? And if it didn't, then you probably shouldn't do it. And the only way you can figure that out is if you test and track the data. It's really not that hard. But yeah, use data. We call it iterative intelligence in our business. Every time someone opens one of our email newsletters and clicks on any of the articles, the AI keeps track of what everyone's doing, and it makes the next best version of the newsletter based on the way people behave. We actually refer to them internally as interest letters, because it's based on the interest of the audience as much as it's based on what the publisher wants to put into the marketplace. And so, but why do we do that? Because we know that if we can track what people are doing and adapt based on their behavior, that's a really useful use case for AI. So if you're going to use this stuff, just make sure that you test it against maybe something that you wrote on your own or something you would have done on your own, to make sure that it's actually giving you a better result than human alone. And what we found is like human plus AI tends to be the way. So, but really get the best results.
Well, I can share that how I found out about you is when I was watching what JJ was doing with their Mindshare newsletters. And I mean, our inboxes are just overwhelmed, right? And so many things. I feel like I spend my morning just going delete. And I just noticed there was a real shift in some of the content, and I couldn't, like, I was like, what's going, what, like they're in my brain, like this is exactly the kind of stuff. And it wasn't, it's not all just from, the Mindshare community, but it was connecting things, but it felt like they were inside my brain and giving me exactly the kind of content that I needed. And yeah, Anne saying she noticed that too with JJ's email. So like and I was like, what just happened? Something just happened that was very different, because suddenly I'm opening the emails, which I didn't open them before because it was like part of the clutter. And I'm reading things. And if I can't get to it right now, I'm bookmarking it and actually coming back. Like my behavior is changing because of everything that you're talking about here. So I just want to share. I'm seeing that, Anne's clearly on JJ's list as well and is experiencing that. It was a noticeable, and that's knows. I mean, you guys know how much I adore JJ. I mean, it was a different level of getting inside my brain that clearly using these tools can allow us to do with our audience in a way that just simple sort of human power can't.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's extraordinary. And we've been able to do this over and over and over, whether you're a famous sort of New York Times bestselling author, or thought leader like JJ, or, you just run a business and you have subscribers, or customers, patients that want to hear from you, and you're not mailing them regularly. We like to say that consistency creates trust, and trust creates transactions. And, we're able to do that with AI in a way that takes you less than 5 minutes of your time a week. And of course, using that adaptive learning, that iterative intelligence that we were just talking about, so that each newsletter really feels like your subscribers are part of the journey. And how great is it to be able to kind of give your marketplace, give your subscribers like a big hug and value every week. And then, you slip some of your ads in there, and when they're ready to buy, they click. And it's a very low drag on your time and a very high lift on your sort of metrics and engagement. Yeah. And we made it so that it would be better, faster, and cheaper than a human for newsletters. So.
I love it. I love it. Can you share? I mean, this is kind of the perfect moment. Can you share for folks? So we now have the $97 a month if you want to learn all things AI for yourself. But if you're interested in optimizing your newsletters, the way that JJ and some of these major thought leaders and small business owners are doing, can you just share a little bit more about how it all works?
Yeah, absolutely. So, at a basic level, just go to daily.ai, our website, www.daily.ai. And you can book a demo with myself, or I have 2 guys on my team that support me with that as well. And it's really easy. If you want to move forward, you fill out a survey and you jump on a 45-minute onboarding call, and then the product and our team does everything for you. They build the newsletter, they help you get it launched, they monitor the data. All you have to do is review your newsletter edition each week or each day or whatever cadence you want to send it, and approve it. And that's the 5-minute investment per week, is you reviewing the content that the product makes. You don't have to learn any new technology. We integrate with almost every possible CRM on the planet. You don't have to push any buttons. We do all the work for you. It's really extraordinary. But if it's not for everybody, and if to figure out if it's right for you, you can just go to daily.ai and book a demo. Pretty straightforward.
Awesome. Joe, thank you so much. This is fantastic. How can folks find you, connect with you? What's the best place for them to find
Instagram. So my Instagram handle is at Joe Stolte Live, JoeStoltelive. Or if you just Google me, it should be one of the top results.
Here, I'm throwing that into the chat there for everyone who's here live. We'll make sure that we've listed that on the replay video as well. Thank you for the work that you're doing and for really helping us break this down into something that is, I just feel like I understand the landscape of it. I was never somebody who was afraid of it, but I certainly felt overwhelmed by it and felt like, okay, I got to figure this out, and I don't even know where to begin. And I feel like the mental model piece that you have just shared with us is so incredibly helpful. Thank you so much. Any final words as we wrap up?
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Well, thank you. Have a great night, everybody. And we will see you back here in a couple of weeks. Take good care. Thanks, Joe.